Welcome to the eighth episode of Let Me Go on a Tangent, my podcast. Today, I wanna. I've I've realized the unintentional theme of the things that I talk about is very much based in nostalgia. Even the new stuff that I talked about, like the Fiona and Cake uh spinoff, was technically new, but it was based off of something like old, very much still from my childhood. So I feel like that still counts. But today we're gonna go deep in the nostalgia, even deeper than the Leica stuff, which is, oh my god. Yeah, no, I'm committing to this. We're talking about Curious George, the film from 2006. And hold on, stay with me, okay? But now hold on with me now. It's really good, which is funny because it's rated on IMDb 6.5 out of 10, but you know what? It was probably rated by adults. So what are you doing watching a children's film and judging it that harshly? And you might be saying, why are you watching a children's film? Because I like whimsy and fun. Next question. This is so near and dear to my heart because not only me, but my whole family, we all have a very big fondness for Curious George as a character. And the uh, the time I was born in 2003, so this came out 2006 when I was 3, and this was at a time in my life where it was just me and my mom, and there was many movies that we just rewatched all the time, just us two, and a dog sometimes. I think at that point I had a dog, but yeah, it's just really special because it captures that prime, ignore that sound, that prime childhood space of everything's sort of floaty and sunshiny and nice and soft, and you don't really worry about anything. And this film really it's like a soft pillow, and it is just so nice. And my little brother wanted to watch it because he also has Curious George. He has his stuffy is Curious George. Like we all have one, and his is Curious George, and it's one that I had when I was very little. So it's all very special. Okay, and we watched it again, and I just wanted to talk about it because aside from my personal sentiments, there is actually a lot of art stuff that I like. And yeah, I want to talk. I think it has like that kind of timeless charm to it that not a lot of films nowadays have. I feel like when when corporate businesses attached to animation studios and really just film studios in general are trying to pump out something that appeals to the young masses, they tend to make themselves very dated unintentionally. And it's like, compare Ruby Gillman to Mitchells and Machines. Both are very dated in their language and their humor, but somehow Mitchell's still feels timeless, and Ruby Gillman is very much, this was made in this year, and by the time it was released, it was already out of fashion. Like it had fallen out of the trends that it was basing itself on. So that's not what you want. And I feel like Curious George is the exact opposite, in much in the same vein that its humor is all charming and witty, and it is timeless in the sense that it could happen anywhere or it could happen anytime. It just is. It's hard to articulate if. I guess I have to articulate it, but it's hard to articulate if you haven't already watched it. Even if you don't have a kid and if you like whimsy and feeling like a nice big hug in the form of a movie, just watch it. Oh, it's for little babies. Yeah, you were a baby once. Maybe nurture that part of yourself and you'll feel better. Yeah. Do you not deserve to have the same comfort that you had in your earlier ages? Do you not deserve to still have that level of enjoyment for things that you love? I think yes. Maybe just give this to yourself, okay? On the topic, there, like, before we get into the actual plot of the movie, I do want to bring up also, if you haven't heard, the creation. of Curious George, the authors of them, was a Jewish couple, and there's this whole rabbit hole of like they were fleeing Nazi Germany. I think maybe in France, and all they could carry was like they rode out on bikes, and all they could carry was like some clothes and their sketchbooks, which had Curious George in them. And they were stopped by two Nazi soldiers, and I'm not sure if it was Nazi soldiers. It was Nazi aligned authority figures. Let's say that. And then they looked in their packs, and then they found the character Curious George, and they were like, "You're good." And then that's like he saved their lives. It's a whole thing. You should look it up because it's very. It makes sense. And it's just nice. Okay. I just wanted to bring that up because it's a fascinating thing, and I found it, and I was like, "Wow, really?" But to make a long story short, let's just get into the plot. All right, let's go. All right, so right away, I want to talk about the music and the colors because we open on a little montage of George's life in the jungle, and he's getting into all sorts of shenanigans as he does because he's curious and just a rebellious little guy. I wouldn't say rebellious, I would say more just spirited. So the music for this soundtrack is done by Jack Johnson and Heitor Pereira. I don't know who those two men are, but thank you for creating the soundtrack of my childhood because oh boy, did all the memories just start to come back when I listened to the first song because it's something that is repeated in the run of the movie. Like they repeat songs, but it works to their credit because it highlights the tone. It either matches the tone of like, oh, this is fun, it's like whimsical, but then there's like a bit of melancholy, and then that contrasts with the moments where it's used and it's like really, really sad, like it's supposed to be a really emotional beat. I just think it works really well. And the colors of the whole movie, but this one in particular, this like the starting scene in particular, it's like it's very much bright, a lot of primary colors, and it's there's not a lot of monotony, if that makes sense. It's very much storybook land, is what I would call. It's akin to like, you know how Puss in Boots, they were credited for that painterly style of like fairy book uh style type of illustration. This is similar but different in that it's less of a painterly style and more of a block colored storybook type of illustration, and it lends well to the playful tone both of the movie and of the character George, and we're seeing him in his natural environment, so that it really makes sense that this color palette in the jungle is matching with his type of personality. Very playful, very fun, very childlike and innocent. And I have a question. George is like a baby, right? Cuz like he's a little monkey. Where are his parents? Where are his little monkey parents? Because all at the end of the montage, when he's playing with all the little baby animals like the zebra and the hippo and all that jazz, all the parent animals come and take them away, and George is left alone because all the parent animals are like, "How dare you play with my child?" Because adults don't like curiosity, I guess, is the through line, or at least not the way that George likes to do it so freely. And George is just left alone. So where's his parents? Is he's just alone? That was really sad. And the music, as we like draw back on the scene and we switch to the next scene, we're like zooming out on him sleeping alone, and the music, the lyrics is like, "Please don't go away. Is this how it's supposed to be?" And I'm sad now. It's the first 5 minutes of Curious George, and I'm sad. Why is. Ugh, I can't get in my feelings too much, okay? We gotta move on. So we switch to what I can only assume is New York, because any city in a movie is New York. It's either New York or it's LA. There's no in between, okay? Unless they specify. So I'm assuming this is New York, partially because there's a museum and that's where a lot of the plot takes place. Oh no, they say, yeah. One of the taxi drivers in like a running gag that he's like he's seen everything. That's the New Yorker stereotype. So they definitely are New York, okay? I know things. I remember that. So they are New York. We pull into a museum and Ted, which is the name of the man in the yellow hat in this movie. Side note, voiced by Will Ferrell, which I don't know why Will Ferrell voices. I'm mad that he's like so good at it because he voices Ted, but he also voices Megamind from Megamind. And let's just move on because I can't think about it too much. That's just something I needed you to know. And so he works at the museum, and he really loves his job. The only problem is that the museum isn't getting enough money to stay open. Ignore the notification sound. But the museum doesn't have enough money to stay open because not people aren't like it's not drawing in the crowds like it used to. And we see that part of the problem is because they're not getting on like kids level because if your prime objective is to teach people, you start with kids because they're I feel the most influential part of society when it comes to learning because they're the ones who have to learn the most, right? So, um the problem is Ted doesn't know how to teach children. They've not yet. It really seems like it's only Ted and then the owner and then the owner's son in this operation. I don't see any other workers in the entirety of the film. So we'll just say Ted's the stand-in for the workers in the museum because that's the only one I see. He doesn't the problem is that he doesn't know how to interact or engage with the children's innate curiosity on their level. He's trying to get them to come to his level, but like he's a grown ass man and they're children. So it's obviously not working. They're bored as hell. They can't touch anything. They're understimulated and they want to go eat lunch at 9 o'clock in the morning because that's how boring this shit is. Okay? But unfortunately for the children, their teacher Maggie, which she's a she's a cute little elementary teacher, little pixie do, little pixie haircut, and she brings them every week to the museum. Which, by the way, how the hell do you have the budget for that in New York? You're an elementary school teacher, but I digress. Let's just. There's a lot of things that don't make sense financially, like how Ted can afford his own apartment on the 17th floor of a New York on a museum worker's salary. That doesn't make any sense either. But again, this is for children, so you kind of just have to let go. Just let that go. What was it saying? Oh yeah, Maggie is down bad. Like bad. Like she's dropping hints left and right, and Ted, my guy, is just not picking them up. Even though they're like obviously into each other, but she comes every week just to listen to him talk and just having a grown up crush, I guess. It's very cute though. They're very like once they get their chemistry going and like their character dynamic with each other later in the film, very cute. I approve. Uh, and then we move on to like the plot, which is that the owner, which is Bloomsbury, yes, the owner's name is Bloomsbury, and then his son Junior. Bloomsbury takes Ted aside, says, we're broke and we have to sell." And Junior's like, "Yes, sell for a parking lot." And I go, "Capitalism is the root of all evil. You're going to make this museum a parking lot?" Junior is the worst. I think he is fully the antagonist. I was gonna say villain, but he kind of has like a mini redemption arc. He's too pathetic to be called a villain, so antagonist I feel is the most appropriate name for the role that he fills. But he's so pathetic. But he wants to make the deal, and Ted is like, "No, we can't do that. What if we get like a really big exhibit?" And he points to the idol of I can't pronounce the name. It's some name that is indicative of its origin in Africa. And another side note, I don't like that the saving grace is taking something from Africa and bringing it to New York. I don't feel like I have to explain that part much and why I don't like it as an adult, because that's not yours, Ted. Fuck are you doing? Hmm? It's not yours. It's not yours to have. You don't think they have museums in Africa? You don't think that was supposed to be there for some reason? But I digress. Let's move on. So he elects to go on this journey to Africa, comes in hot with no cultural relativism. I'm gonna keep talking about this because it does bother me, because he's very much like the one white dude in this like procession of indigenous people that are leading him. And it just is like, in as an adult, knowing what I know, and with the political landscape being what it is right now, it was weird because I couldn't turn off my adult brain fully. So I was just like, Ted, my guy, shouldn't you know the practice of cultural relativism and not be this much of a complete nerd? But, moving on. He just has zero self awareness. And oh, by the way, the map that he's using to find this idol, this giant monkey idol that's supposed to save him as an exhibit, Junior ripped out half the map to sabotage him so he would never find it. So he's going to the jungle. Junior sucks, but also his dad kind of sucks too. So, whatever. But he meets George in the jungle when they stop for a break, and George, I feel like, for no reason other than like Ted engages with him in a game of peekaboo, and is like the first like authority figure, I guess, relatively speaking, to play with him on his level. It was like akin to imprinting. How immediately attached he was to this random man, but it's very cute. And Ted tries to leave, and George is like, "Dad, no! Dad, don't leave me! I'm coming!" And then he leaves, and then they find the idol, but it's super tiny, and they basically go, "Well, shit, this is not gonna fix our problem." And there's some miscommunication, and the people back home think that it was big, and they go home. George follows him back to the ship. The music and the colors. I cannot express to you how much it brings. It brings back such nostalgic memories to me. I could like taste it and smell it. That's how like sensory it is. Like it's synthetically just in my mind. It's crazy. It's like how synthesization, I think, is the word, where you like hear colors, or so, like you associate some sensory uh some senses with other senses, and some sensory cues with other sensory cues. So like if you hear a song, you associate very specific colors with them, or if you taste something, you associate it with, like, it's something like that. And this is very much this for me. It's so fun. George causes a traffic jam looking for his yellow man and is sad, but then he finds his dad. And Ted finds out that his boss thinks the idol is big, so now he has to figure out that whole situation. George finally makes himself known when Ted gets to his apartment. Uh, and we meet Ivan, the doorman, who I am almost certain was either ex military or a Russian mafia boss in his past life, because he is a bloodhound sniffing for George because his apartment has a no pet policy and he's very strict about it. We have shenanigans. Ted's like, "Why did you follow me all the way from Africa? Really weird." Of course, is off put by it. And then we have the iconic paint bubble bath scene. Iconic to me, at least. And to anyone who's ever seen this film, you will agree. This is iconic, okay? Because it's just what I was talking about before with all the sensory, like, memories attached to it. And it's like very much. It doesn't help that he eats one of the bubbles and is like, ew. So it even more is like, I taste it and I smell it and I see it and I hear it. What's the last sense? Smell, taste, smell, taste, touch. I'm not touching it, but all the four other ones, I'm doing it hard. Okay, I'm here for it. And then, of course, with all the commotion, Ivan finds Ted, accuses him of having a pet, which stupid because he's a monkey. I feel like it's obvious that whatever. And then he gets evicted on the spot, which also feels illegal to do, but whatever. Damn, capitalism strikes again. Uh, and then they go to the this is cute. They go to the museum, and on the way, Ted tells them to blend in so no one will suspect them, I guess, of having a monkey. And he copies all the stuff that he sees the parents and children do as they walk past, which is so cute. It even more so just solidifies that, like, that's a monkey, but it's also his son. That's his baby. They both bond to each other in such a short amount of time. And my mom said is like, yeah, that's pretty much how it is, because if you get a new dog, you're going to get really attached in the 2 days that you know him. And I was like, you're so right. So it's like, yeah, it makes sense that he gets, in the 2 days that he knows him, he makes him lose his job, get evicted from his home. He sleeps out on the street because once he like breaks the news to his boss, it's like, no, yeah, you're fired, and you gotta go tell all those press people also that you fucked up. So he does that, and like, he sleeps on the street. But even so, he saves George later because he's so attached to him. Because he accidentally called animal control on him when he didn't know any better, and then he takes him to Africa. But on the boat to Africa, I'm gonna butcher the like last act of this because it's not super important to what the core of what I'm talking about is. But he's on a ship to Africa. Ted goes to save him. They're on the ship, and they realize that the idol is actually part of the map. So they were actually on the right track. They were actually on the right track to finding the big idol, which is what they wanted. But before all that happens, before he gets caught by animal control and they have like the down part of the hero's journey, they actually come up with a solution to like give them a big exhibition, which they meet up with Clovis, this super scientist character, which is fun, also fun. Uh Very whimsical. Reminds me of Treasure Planet. I should talk about Treasure Planet. Anyway, basically it's a giant projector that makes it look like it's a big idol. And then they bring the solution to Bloomsbury, but of course Junior doesn't want there to be solution because he wants to sell the museum for a parking lot because that's where the money is. Sad but true. And he sabotages the thing, frames George. Thinks that Ted obviously is aware that George didn't mean to do it, but Junior also gave him coffee. It's like he made him spill the coffee on it. Or no, he gave him the coffee and then he spilled coffee on it to make it look like he was just being like just a bad monkey, like he did it on purpose. He's being messy. But in fact, he framed him. And Ted is aware that Junior definitely had a hand to play in it, so but it doesn't matter because now that there's nothing, Bloomsbury has lost his spark, which, by the way, get a spine because I know you're old, but do you want this museum or not? Okay? Do you want it or do you not want it? Because that could be repaired, and I feel like you're falling to the whims of your child way too easily if this is what you really want. But I digress. The whole thing with the ship happens. They find out that, yes, the idol, you can find the big one. They do so. They bring it back to save the day. And that's pretty much the end. Uh, aside from, oh, I forgot to say, right after he loses his job, Ted, I'm jumping around a bit. Sorry about that. But Ted, right after he loses his job and right after he sleeps in the park with George, he goes to the zoo because he's following George because George is a curious monkey and he's gonna play and he's playing in the zoo and they meet up with Maggie and her students who all love George, obviously, and then the iconic balloon scene. Curious George was doing it before Puss in Boots, before Up, before Mutant Ninja Turtles, that new one that came out this year, and before Spider Verse, because elements, I've obviously they didn't take inspiration from Curious George, but it's funny how much I can see like are similar or like parallel to all of these movies. But no, they definitely took this from them. I like this more than Up. Yeah, I'll say it. Because only the first 5 minutes of Up makes sense. It was better as a short film. Okay, just show me the first part, and then maybe 5 more minutes of Russ and the old man. It just doesn't hold up for me. Okay, but I digress. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, iconic flying over the city scene with balloons tied to him, and all the other stuff happens, and then the very end of the movie is Maggie and Ted once again are like nerd flirting at each other, talking about dinosaur bones or whatever, and then the kids are like, you better get your monkey because he's in a rocket ship. And Ted is like, hey, what? And then I think it just kicks off for them for a sequel. I don't know if there's a sequel they go to. I know there's a sequel where they have adventures, but it's less. I don't know if it's like less of a sequel and it's more of like just this is something like Scooby Doo. Like that's like the movies that come after each other aren't necessarily sequels. It's just something that is also Scooby Doo. It's like that. I don't know if it's a sequel, but it is Curious George. There's definitely a word for that. Maybe anthology movies. Um, Besides the point, that's how the movie ends. It's just so nice to watch a movie and have it be nice to each other. Uh, there is a really funny moment also towards the end because I've talked about how Junior is pathetic because his whole character is like he's conniving and underhanded and sabotages all of the attempts to keep the museum in business. But his motivation for doing so is that his dad likes Ted more than him, which honestly, I'd be pissed too. What are you talking about? Like the dad, Bloomsbury, the owner of the museum, said that like he would have gone to get the idol himself in his youth, but he had Junior, so he chose to do that instead. And that I don't want to have sympathy for Junior, but like fuck, man, like you're telling me that I kept you from doing your hopes and dreams? Not something that any child wants to hear. Put on top of that he very obviously likes Ted more than you. I mean, you could be more proactive and like chipper. You could I'm not saying be more like this person, but there are traits that are more pleasant in this person than you, so maybe just try being a better person. I don't know. But towards the end, he's still working at the museum as like not a bus boy, a valet. A bus boy for cars, if you will. And he's driving cars to the parking lot down the street. And oh, it's poetic justice in its finest form. And he has a moment where he's like, okay, I parked all the cars. And his dad's like, good job. I'm proud of you. And then he breaks down crying because that's all he really wanted. Like that's a grown man who's like hasn't grown out of being a child yet. I mean, he's working under his father. They're both balding. It's very obvious that if he hasn't been coddled, he's been neglected, and it's like he's not an adult mentally yet. Like he hasn't gotten there. So like, if he gets a couple more proud of yous, maybe he just will graduate college finally. I don't know what this man does. it's not clear. It doesn't need to be, because again, film meant for 3 to 7 year olds. But I have to assume that he like does books or like math or something, like accounting for the museum. I don't know. But that is that. I talked about the art and the music. I think I've said what I wanted to say. It's just nice to talk a little bit about something that was very near and dear to me and my family. It's very sentimental in that way. Um, so this movie in particular, in addition to the character at large, is very something very personal to me. And glad I got to share that. So thank you so much for listening. And that'll be it. Thank you, Pacific Tiger Broadcasting. Bye.